All right, thanks for joining me again. Not like you have a choice or anything, but if you remember from the last video, we were talking about start the timer already. I don't want to listen to you. The timer started. 3 parts of the Constitution, be able to list and describe what's going on, preamble, articles, and the amendments. Last video, we talked about the preamble. It states the purpose and the goals of the government back then and today. Today, we're going to go into the articles, which is the structure of the government, going into the specific details of how can we do this every single day? What powers does the government have and do not have? And then how can we change the Constitution? And then eventually, probably one of these videos, we'll talk about the amendments. So let's get to the articles. We did all the preamble. We don't need to do that again. But it's my favorite part. And it should be your favorite part. Now, you can like whatever part you want. So let's look at, not the we the people, Article 1 of the United States Constitution. This is still what we follow today. And in Article 1, it specifically explains that we will have a legislative branch. And that legislative branch, called Congress, this is all written into detail, but I'm giving you the pictures to make it easier for you to understand. We will have 2 houses. We will have a House of Representatives and we will have a Senate, and their main job, this is all in Article 1, is to make laws. They will write the laws. That is their main power. We still follow this today. We will have 100 senators. Well, it doesn't say we have 100 senators, but it says that we will have 2 senators from each state, and we will have 435 members in the House of Representatives. Now, it didn't say that then, but what it says is you will have a number of representatives from each state based on the population of that state. Population meaning the amount of people. So if you're in a state, don't worry about how big or how small a state is. It's all about the number of people. So if there's a lot of people in your state, then you get to have a lot of representatives that make laws in the House of Representatives. And if there's not very many people in your state, then you don't get very many representatives making laws in the House of Representatives. But in the Senate, 50 states, every state gets 2 senators. And there's a whole background story to why that is. We'll go into that in some other video some other day. Again, if you got a lot of people in your state, it doesn't really matter that California is really big. What matters is there's a lot of people living in California. And if there's a lot of people, then those lot of people need a lot of representatives to represent them. They should have a person that makes laws for them. There is a ratio. For every 750,000 people, you get 1 representative that makes laws for those 750,000 people. Those 750,000 people can't go to Washington, D.C. and make a law. What they do is they communicate with their representative and say, hey, we want a law that says free Funyuns. I don't know why that's what I said. That's just stupid, but whatever. Those 750,000 people, maybe they're not very smart. Maybe they love Funyuns, but they can't go to Washington, D.C. and pass that law. So what they do is they tell the representative, and that representative goes in the House of Representatives and tries to get these guys to vote, yes, free Funyuns. And then the law goes over to the Senate, and then they all vote, yes, free Funyuns. And then the president, oh, now we're in Article 2. But so anyway. Article 1 explains all these details, and then you get 2 senators. It goes into details. You get 2 senators, and a senator gets elected for 6 years, and you got to be 30 years old to be a senator. And if you want to be in the House of Representatives and you want to vote for Funyun laws, then you only get to serve for 2 years if you get voted. So every 2 years, you got to run again and say, I want to run again. Vote for me, and I'll get you free Funyuns. And you have to be 25 years old. But I'm 24. Then you can't be in the House of Representatives. Sorry. Going into the specific details of Article 1, the legislative branch, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So Article 1, Section 8. So that's Article 1, Section 8. It's kind of like a chapter. It's a section. It's a specific section, and it explains the enumerated powers, or the powers that are written down, explicitly written down. You can do this. You can do this. These are the enumerated powers. These are some very important things. They are specifically stated and written down so that everyone knows this is what you can do. The legislative branch can impose and collect taxes. Oh, man, you mean the government could take money from me? Who put that in there? Well, they put that one in there at the very beginning, and it's been there for 200 years, and there's nothing you can do about it because you cannot. Well, actually, if we amend the Constitution, which we'll talk about in another video, which means to change the Constitution, but until you amend the Constitution, which is very difficult, the government can create taxes. If they want to create a Funyun tax, they can do it because they have the enumerated power. The Constitution says that this legislative branch can write a law that says Funyun tax. What's the deal with Funyuns? They can borrow money. Yes, that's right. I can borrow money. You can borrow money. The government also can borrow money from a bank. That's, when they need money. Why don't they just print it? That's another conversation for another day. And we will talk about the government and their relationship with money and printing money. But Governments are a lot like people, and they have to borrow money just like you and I. Sometimes the government needs to go to war, and there's a big issue, and they don't really have the money on hand. They have to borrow that money, and they're allowed to borrow that money. That means the government is allowed to go into debt. Our government is trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt today, and unfortunately, they're allowed to because Article 1, Section 8 says they can borrow money. And by definition, if you borrow money, that means you go into debt. And so our government's allowed to be in debt. Too much debt's bad, though. Regulate foreign and interstate commerce. Basically means business. So the government makes laws about what we buy and sell with other countries. The government can make laws about what we buy and sell between states. Who can buy what, who can sell what can go in between the states. They have a law. They're allowed to make laws about, they're allowed to make money. It's right there. The legislative branch declares war. Please remember that. It is not the president. Article 1, Section 8 says that the legislative branch declares war. The president cannot declare war on another country. The president can ask the legislative branch to declare war on a specific country so we can send our military over and then we can fight. But it has to be the legislative branch according to the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. Raise and maintain an army and navy, so the legislative branch has the authority to create a military, make sure that that military is funded, make sure that military is organized, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper. This is a really big part of Section 8, the enumerated powers, and this is the one that is talked a lot about in higher level social studies classes, because if you really look at this, all laws which shall be necessary and proper, well, necessary and proper can be interpreted different by everyone. That can mean something completely different to everyone that reads it. What I think is necessary, a law that I think is necessary, someone else might not think is necessary. This is a lot of gray area. This is a lot of wiggle room for the government basically to do whatever it wants. Very smart of our original founding fathers to write this Constitution and make sure they put 200 years ago when they were writing Article 1, Section 8, someone was like, what kind of laws should we let the government make? Should we be specific, or should we leave some wiggle room so that in 200 years from now, when they're driving flying cars, they might have to make flying car laws or something? Or like, all right, well, whatever laws are necessary or proper, whatever they need to do, let them do. Whoa. Whatever they need to do, let them do. That could be kind of dangerous. That might cause some conflicts, but this comes up from time to time where people say the government shouldn't be able to do that. And they'll always go back to Article 1, Section 8, and they'll make an argument that, no, we're sorry. You don't like this law, but guess what? It's necessary, and here's why. And there's nothing you can do. And you say, well, no, you don't have power to do that. Well, it's kind of necessary and proper. So this thing gets rolled out a lot. It's a very significant part, a lot of contention, a lot of argument about this part. It's very smart of the founding fathers to put it in, because it's better to at least have the argument than to not be able to do some of the things that we can do. So, yeah, it leads to some problems, but we do need to give the government some flexibility and some freedom to do some things. And if the government oversteps what it should be doing, there are other branches of the government that can step in and change things. So again, necessary and proper basically means our Congress can really make any law they want. They stretch this as much as they want. It's often called the elastic clause, and they can stretch it out like, oh, here's what it means. No, actually, it really means this. And so that gets bended, and it's flexible. Like in the Constitution, one of the examples is there's nothing that says that the government can create a bank. Nothing in here that says the government could create a bank. Well, Thomas Jefferson, Alex Hamilton, they get in an argument very at the beginning of our American history. Like, no, Thomas Jefferson, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution. I read it over and over and over and over. Thomas Jefferson says you can't make a government bank. And Hamilton comes in and says, you missed a spot. Because if you look real close here, Article 1, Section 8, it says that we can do whatever is necessary and proper. And guess what? The government needs some money, and we need to borrow money from somebody. So who do we borrow the money from? You know what? We should be able to borrow the money from our government bank. Is it necessary? Yeah, we need someone to borrow a lot of money from, so let's create a national bank because it's necessary. It's proper because we need it. You can't do it, Jefferson argues, but Hamilton says, no, we need it, and it's kind of necessary, and if it's kind of necessary, then they can do it. In the articles of our Constitution, it explains each branch: the executive, the legislative, the judicial. The executive, you've got the president; legislative, we got the Congress, we just talked about, and the judicial, which is the Supreme Court. And in each article, it explains all these different powers that each branch has. And a lot of these powers that each branch has are used to limit the power of each branch. The legislative branch, although it has the power to do what is necessary and proper, again, so they can make any law that's necessary or proper, but the executive branch has the power to veto those laws. The legislative branch can, nope, we need it. All right, but the executive branch can step in and say, whoa, you're stepping too far. You can't do that. And also the judicial branch can step in and say, no, that law violates another part of the Constitution. So there's a lot of different checks. It's like a game of rock, scissors, paper, or rock, paper, scissors, depending on where you live. And so each branch can equalize each other so that they are limiting each other's power. Because again, go back to the big idea of we are giving our power to the government because we need them to do big things. We need them to do great things. We need them to protect our rights. We need them to promote the general welfare and make our country better. We need them to protect us from outside enemies. They need to protect us from inside enemies. They need to establish fair courts and fair laws. They've got a lot of stuff that they have to do that makes our lives great. And we've asked them to do this, and we've given them all the authority and the power to get it done. But the problem is when we, the citizens, or we, the people, give all of our power to the government and ask them to do these things, in a perfect world, we don't have any worries. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world where we have given a lot of power to specific individuals, and those specific individuals can use that power against us. And so we have to be careful, and that's why we created a government that has equalized and limited the powers of each branch. So if you look at Article 1, you look at Section 7, specifically, again, the articles, the second part of the Constitution goes into specifics, it goes into the details, and Article 1 tells you specifically and explicitly how to turn a bill into a law. What's the difference between a bill and a law? A bill is a proposed law. It is not official. It is nothing. Once it is a law, it's official, and everyone has to follow it, and then it comes to life. A bill is the ideas and everything written down before it's official. And you can watch the Schoolhouse Rock song, but anyway, here's how it works. Instead of writing out all the words in the Constitution, let's just make a picture. And basically it says the House of Representatives have to vote yes, the Senate has to vote yes. Or no, wait, sorry. So if the House of Representatives says yes, but the Senate says no, the bill does not become a law. If the House of Representatives says yes and the Senate says yes, then it goes to the president. The president can say no. The bill doesn't become a law. These are specifically written in Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution, explaining how a bill becomes a law, how our laws are written. So if the House of Representatives says yes, and the Senate says yes, and the president says yes, then congratulations, Bill. You are now a law, and that law exists in our country, and everyone has to follow it. And that law can be saying what you can't do, but that law could also say what people get to do. That law could say when you turn 65, the government will give you retirement money, and the government will pay for your health care. That is an example of a bill becoming a law. Laws are just not rules or rules that say what you can and can't do. Laws can be beneficial. They can be things where the government is helping you out, or the government is creating things. Don't just think of laws as I can't do that, or rules like in school where I can't do this. Yes, at a school there are a bunch of rules of things you can't do. But there's also a bunch of rules that say you get to go to this class and you get to learn this. You get to go to this cooking class and you get to make this. You get the opportunity to participate in sports. You get the opportunity. These are also rules. These are also laws that you as a student have the opportunity to participate in band. You get a breakfast. You get a lunch. You get a third lunch if you go to our specific school. So those are all rules too. Those are rules that are written down. They don't just say what students can't do. They say what students receive. They receive an education that you don't have to pay for. You have the opportunity to take all kinds of different math, all kinds of different theater classes and history classes. And you may not like these opportunities, but that's fine. Same thing with laws in the books today. There are thousands of laws written in America that have nothing to do with you, that you don't care about, that do not affect you. Like right now, the law that I mentioned, when you turn 65, you get Social Security, which is money that helps you through your retirement years. You also get Medicare, which is your health care that pays for you, but you don't get it. Odds are the people watching this video right now are not 65 years old. So again, that's an example of a law that's written down that doesn't really affect you, that doesn't help you. Same thing with the rules in school. Like, I don't really like that rule. So what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't change that rule exists, because some people might like that rule. Some students may like the idea that they get to take various math classes that will help them get into college, which then will lead to a computer coding job, which will lead to lots of money. So laws and rules are not just what you can't do, they're also what you get to do, or what the government will do for you. and they start as bills and they end up as laws. And that is written in Article 1, Section 7 of your U.S. Constitution. We'll jump into Article Deuce in the next video.